Hey everyone, how are you today? Bess McCarty here with the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Today we are covering John Maxwell's book, Winning with People. An incredible book. Like all of his over 100 books, every page seems to be just jumping with truth and keys to having a better life and a happier life. And winning with people is really crucial for business, for relationships, for life. So this book really applies to everything across the board because it said that all problems are communication problems. So thank you for joining in. Whoever is here, I'd love if you're watching the replay, please type in replay because I'd like to thank you for that. And like to hear where you're watching from too. So thank you all for being here, and I will invite some people as I let you know a little bit about this this show. Usually it's presented by Jeffrey David Gamble and Brandy Pember on weekdays, Monday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Yeah, it's trying to reconnect here. Sorry for any internet disconnections. I'm not sure what it's doing, but welcome. So usually Jeff and Brandy present the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show Monday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and I am often a guest speaker here, usually on Wednesdays. This show is sponsored by the MLM Millionaire Academy, generic school for network marketers. Our purpose is to help people grow, to educate, equip, and empower entrepreneurs. So welcome Pierre, glad to see you. Welcome very much. Follow Pierre. He's a good person to follow content that he posts. And hope that the internet is not interrupting too much here. And if anyone would like a text reminder for this class, for this show, please let me know, and I will be glad to add you. So the school, just a moment about the school. This show is sponsored by the MLM Millionaire Academy, School for Network Marketers. And my favorite thing that we teach in there, our signature thing that really makes a difference in people's business, is a script, the favor script. It's a real indirect script for helping people to build their business the fastest, easiest, simplest, most duplicatable way I've ever seen in network marketing. And we also teach to do a 10-minute presentation to bridge people to the video before you send them to a video. So those are the things that I'm so happy to be teaching in the school and get results back from people frequently, like a friend of mine who's in the school, and she said, "Oh, forgot to tell you, jumped 3 ranks in the last 3 months using your methods." I've been so busy, I forgot to tell you that. So these are the things that I live for that really, really make my day. And welcome, Jeff. Glad to see you. So today, Winning with People, John Maxwell. And so far this month, Jeff and Brandy have covered we're on chapter 9 of this book today, which is people are interested in the people are interested in them. So far we've covered John Maxwell's question, are we prepared for relationships? And now we're covering the section, the section, are we willing to focus on others? And that is just not easy. It's just not, that is natural to come, practice and effort and focus and intent for me to be able to do that. So John calls this chapter the charisma principle. And he says people are interested in people who are interested in them. And I'm going to read you a couple of quotes that he put here from Dale Carnegie. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years trying to get other people interested in you. And haven't we all tried it that way? It's better to be interested than interesting, and trying to impress others. As John Maxwell said, he did that for a long time as a new pastor, trying to impress others, thinking that was the way, get people to believe in you, and then they'll listen to you and what you have to say and share and how you can help them. First, you need to impress them. But John said no. He's actually embarrassed by his behavior at that time. And he learned to switch over into becoming interested in people, making it about them. Sounds counterintuitive, but it really works. So John says, a question I must ask myself is, do I usually focus on others and their interests or on my own? I know someone who I'm coaching is personally struggling with that, trying to develop a better relationship with their daughter. And I'm coaching them to observe and notice, well, in the conversations with your daughter, is the topic that you bring up and talk about mostly about you, or is it about your daughter? And that's a very telling thing to observe. If we are getting neutral response or no response or even angry response, is it time to look at ourselves and say, could it be something that I did or said that I could do better? So that's what this chapter is about. And it's just not easy. But I had this dramatic turnaround with a family member myself when I learned to become interested and curious in them. Not nosy, but just curious. Well, what's that like for you? You know, somebody comments on, that the person commented on something. I go, well, how was that? What was that like? You know, was that hard for you? What else? And you just use that. I found that I like to use that thing that they just said as a lead off into another thing. I could have let it, die, and that would be the end of the road of that topic. But I'll give some examples in a few minutes. First of all, I wanted to share an example that John has in this book where he and Margaret went on this cruise, and there was this lady named Phyllis who actually greeted him in the very beginning, and then again at dinner, and throughout the cruise found them. And he found she and her husband Stanley going around and meeting all these people. She was quick to turn the conversation to ask about them and their interests, whether it was antiques and following up with that, or asking John about what he did. And John said, I'm an author and a conference speaker. And she says, that sounds so interesting. Tell me about it. And that's all that she did, ask people to tell him about it. So she went around and made like 120 friends on that cruise ship. And John found out that she and her husband were retired, and that's what they did. They weren't, at first I thought she's a staff member there or something, but no, they were just retired and traveling around and cruising and having the best time making all these friends. And they end up staying in touch, and she ended up inviting John and his wife Margaret to visit them at their home. So that seems so much more fun than just taking a cruise, and laying there soaking up the sun only for myself, but to go out and meet people and to have the joy of making them feel important or interested, or that you're interested in them. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we can give people. And welcome to Gustavo. Glad to see you. And so he describes that this lady, Phyllis, she became like a Pied Piper. People were following her around and falling in love with her. And why not? When somebody accepts you and makes you feel cared about and important enough for their attention, isn't that really, really special and really rare? I have a friend who went early to one of Eric Worre's events, one of his GoPro events, and I said, how was it? And he said, well, actually, arriving a day early, I met Eric in the halls there. This was a few years back when the conferences were smaller, but he said, I met Eric there. And Eric, said, hello, nice to meet you. Why don't we have dinner tonight and talk? And they did. And guess what they talked about? The guy. They talked to my friend Todd. And Todd said that, he went to dinner with Eric, and Eric said, tell me about yourself. And he did. And Eric looked at him and he said, tell me more. And that story that Todd brought back from that experience has changed me. I've learned to do that, and I've learned to adopt that. And I thought, that is important, And when I met Eric for the first time, we had been friends on Facebook. He gave me such a huge hug. He says he just enveloped me in this great big bear hug, and he said, Bess, my good friend Bess. And I felt like the most important person in the whole world in that moment, in his eyes, because he gave me his total attention. Someone else who does this that you could see as an example is Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, the children's friend. And even though is a show still on the air, I'm not sure. But you can find YouTubes of Mr. Rogers and the attention he gives to each child, looking into the camera and speaking to each person. Now, I raised my son with Mr. Rogers. I used to watch it to heal my own inner child, which was missing my father. I recently saw the movie with Tom Hanks where he played Mr. Rogers, and you can see in there that when Lloyd, the guy who came up to do the interview with Mr. Rogers stopped filming and said, "Lloyd's here. You know, so good to see you." Went over and clasped his hand and looked in his eyes, even though he had met him before. He was greeting him. And then he went back to, he goes, "I'll see you on the break." And he went back to that. And when I learned more about Mr. Rogers, I found that he was doing that from his own experience of feeling hurt when people, getting his feelings hurt, being disregarded, being looked down on. That hurt so badly that he went the other way to make sure the person did feel accepted and connected with and important in that moment in his eyes, to have his total attention. So I'm learning from these people. Now, John says that, or some people actually consider this book an easier read than How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. But that influenced this book a whole lot. I think it was his father who gave John Maxwell Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So what John did is he cites 6 points that he got out of that book here, and I'm going to share them with you with some examples. So he says, number 1, become genuinely interested in other people. And there was one lady who gave him advice. She said, it's all in the greetings and the goodbyes. Those are the important, right? The important, memorable parts of a connection with a person. And number 2 is smile. And John said, he looked in the mirror one day and he said, "John, you're not a handsome dude. How can I fix that?" And he smiled and he goes, "Okay, that helped." And he said, "I've been smiling ever since." And I can say the same thing, that as I grow older, it's said that a smile is the best facelift. So that's why I smile a lot, you guys, because I think I need it. But you know what? When I smile, I feel better and I feel more connected with you. And people have been giving me that feedback from the videos. And it's because I genuinely do love you too. I do love people. But smiling just makes me feel better. And you can even do that on the phone. And guess what? When you make your phone calls to loved ones or business people, when you smile, people can hear it on the phone. Try recording your voice both ways, smiling and not smiling, as you speak, and you'll see what I mean. It's true. And people can feel it. Anyway, it changes you so that your energy is more engaging when you smile, even if they can't see your smile. So that's a body-mind tip from a body-mind therapist. And the shrink of MLM is what I've been called. Okay, so he said that there was this guy who would sell things at a booth, and he found that people would just look at his goods and pass by, but maybe they, at the last second as they're about to pass by, they glance up at him, and if he was smiling, they came back, like a magnet came back again, and took another look at his goods. So in other words, he made more money by smiling. And I realized, I think this is because when we meet some people, like if I go for a walk on the beach and somebody's approaching from the other direction, you never know in life, right, if that person is going to be a friend or foe. You never know if that person's safe or not. That person's going to try to rob you or have, use you, have some ill intent somewhere, some selfish intent. If you're walking in the street in New York, you never know, that person coming toward you could be a friend or a foe. So one way we can tell, usually, is if they're smiling. It's a disarming thing, and it's saying, I am friendly. I am safe to connect with, and maybe smile back. So I think that's why it's important for people to see a smile, because then they know which side of the line that you're on. Is it somebody they can relax around or enjoy or even smile back to? So that's why I think a smile is important. It signals good intent. right? Engaging, like I'm willing to engage with you, like the guy at the booth. And welcome, Deborah. Good to see you. Good to see everybody here. Hey, I'd love your comments. I'd love your takeaways. If you're hearing something that you relate to, that you have a story about, that you have a tip or comment, I'd love for you to put those below so that this can be a two-way discussion, not a one-way. I'd love to hear from you because after all, this is about being interested in you, right? Not me. So even though I have stories here. So we just talked about a smile. We just talked about there are 6 ways that John Maxwell shares. And the first one was become genuinely interested in them, like Mr. Rogers. And the next one is to smile. And number 3 is he says, remember people's names is to him or her the sweetest and most important sound. Think about if somebody's speaking to you and they mention your name while they're talking to you. Deborah, or Pierre, or Jeff, or Gustavo. You know, how does it feel when I call your name out? Doesn't it just light up for you? Don't you feel just a tiny bit better from hearing your name said? Because there's love that goes into that. And when I taught a class for 15 years at a holistic school, Body Mind College in San Diego, we'd have 10 to 20 new students in the school learning massage and body mind therapies. And one of them said, Bess, you know, at the end of the class, they gave feedback. She said, Bess, you always remembered our names. And that's good for me because I don't always. It's hard for me to remember names, so I had to make an effort or play a game. We actually had a game on the first day going around what helped us to remember people's names better. I wonder, do you have any tips? How do you remember names? Is it easy for you, or do you do associations? You know, like with Phyllis, you know, it could be filling up people's hearts with love. You know, the lady on the cruise ship with John and his wife Margaret. So if I was trying to remember her name, I say, well, she's filling people up, so her name is Phyllis, you know, have an association like that. But I've had to work at remembering people's names, but they love it when we do. And, you know, how does that feel to you? So I've applied that to even when I text people or Facebook message them. I try to many times mention their names in the text because it's about, that means you're giving them a little extra attention. If you've ever gotten texts that are generic, like, hi, I really liked your profile, I'd really like to connect with you. And the person, you can tell it's just a generic copy and paste thing. They don't even know your name, or they would have put it there, or they didn't look at your profile and say, hey, I noticed on your profile that you like dogs. I do too. You know, what kind do you have? So they did not look at my profile, even if they said they did, because they didn't even know my name. They couldn't even address me or anything on the profile on there. So attention is gold. We very rarely get it from people. It takes time, doesn't it, to go and really look at their comments, look at their timeline, look at their about page on Facebook, and then to relate back to that. But when we do that, that's when we win, when we get people interested in us. First, we must be interested in them. And welcome. I see that, trying to read that, Manju is here. Welcome. Each one of you is important to me. You matter. Glad you're here. So, the name, number 4 tip that John Maxwell gives from Dale Carnegie, from his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is be a good listener. Encourage people to talk about themselves. And this brings to mind the story of the guy who, that somebody met, or somebody was on a plane, and they asked their seatmate questions about them the whole flight. And the seatmate was a lady, and she just gladly shared about herself and talked, and the person asked these curious questions, you know, well, you know, tell me more about that. How was that? And the lady went on for the whole flight. When she got off, she met somebody at the gate, and the person said, how was your flight? And she said, wonderful. I had the most fascinating, she said, the most fascinating conversationalist sitting next to me the whole time. And the person hearing this realized that 99% of the conversation was about her. That is fascinating to people, and they feel cared about and loved about, and they love sharing about themselves. So the conversationalist was the listener, right? And the topic was the lady, and that was really important to her. And John mentions that on that, he knew, I think it was his mother, that people used to seek her out and confide in her because she was a good listener. And his wife said that's what makes her a great mother-in-law. Now you might wonder what questions to ask people. And this just happened to me yesterday. A neighbor lost a dog. And I've been through that. It's heart-wrenching. What do you say to someone? I texted her, I'm thinking of you, I'm sending you love, can I do anything for you? Do you want me to call? Do you want me to go for a, social distance walk with me or something like that? And then eventually she texted back, well, this is hard, and this is the third dog that she's lost in a year. She has a few dogs, but this is the third one she's lost in a year. And I said, how hard is that? And what were the other dogs' names? And how many have you had, total? And I was just asking her questions because I remember when my Charlie passed away, it just helped for me to talk about it, to talk about, how long it took, what the vet said, what happened then and what happened then. And it just details that might not make sense to somebody else, but it just helped me to debrief and say those things. So I was remembering that, and I was just asking her, and she's going to have the dog cremated, and she's thinking about this or that color of urn. And so, I said, oh, she sent me a picture. I said, that's a beautiful color of an urn. And she goes, yeah, I didn't mean to collect these, but now I've had this many dogs die. And so I said, well, how many? And how long a span was that? And what did the vet say to that? And so I asked her these questions, and she just opened up, and we actually went on for quite a while. And I imagined that it helped, but I really didn't know what to say except to just play off the last comment and ask more about it. The other day I talked with a man who had a stroke recently. He said, how are you doing during this time? I said, okay, this and this and that, and how are you doing? He goes, well, just had a stroke a few weeks ago. And I could have left it at that and said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But I asked him more about that. I said, wow, how are you doing now? And he told me, I said, well, is that really huge adjustment for you? And how are you managing? Are you getting the help that you need? And I imagine, not being able to do the things you used to do is quite a shift, quite an adjustment for you. And he went on and he shared more. So that's what I've been learning to do, is just play off the last thing they said. You could let it die. That could be the end of the road, or I could ask him just a little bit more. Number 5 tip from John Maxwell. And I just want to, where do you live? Maniju asked me, where do I live? I'm in Kansas, in the United States, in Kansas. Where are you from? I'd like to hear where everybody's from. Very much. Okay, we'll continue here with John Maxwell's list. Number 5, talk in terms of the other person's interest, which is treat people like you would like to be treated, right? Because the world revolves around them. It's hard for them to step outside their world and be in yours, but they can talk about theirs more easily. Number 6, he says, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. You may have heard the famous network marketer Mary Kay Ash, who founded Mary Kay Cosmetics. She says, imagine everybody has a sign around them that says, make me feel important. Because inside, we all crave that. And that's what Mr. Rogers says too. Inside everybody, big or little, craves to be known and craves to be accepted and loved, to know that we're lovable and valuable. And that goes a lot along with the inner child work that I've done as an inner child therapist for over 30 years, helping us, encouraging us, supporting us to know and love and cherish ourselves and our feelings and our value. When I practice this with myself, when I cherish myself, it also gives me more understanding about how to cherish other people too. So learning to love myself has been a big step to being able to do this with other people. I don't think I could do it the other way around. So my relationship with myself, with my Creator, has been the fuel and the example of how to connect with other people. And John doesn't actually mention this here, but I'll just have to throw in that that was a key for me. He says, instead of saying to people, well, here I am, say, there you are. And he said, just about anybody can learn to do that. Now, he has 6 questions, discussion questions, I would like to share with you right now. I'd like this to be a discussion. So I'd like you to think about these. I'm going to offer to invite you to think about these and to even comment about them below. So these are questions to help us be better at winning with people and becoming interested in people. Number 1, he said, why do people find it so difficult to become genuinely interested in others? Has this been a problem for you? Explain. Personally, I think it takes more energy, but it's so more rewarding. Oh my goodness, it feels so good. You know, but we're used to just the world revolves around me. And as John Maxwell said, well, 99.999% of the people in the world are someone besides you. So why not address others besides just me? And number 2, he says, can you think of someone you know personally who is charismatic and gifted at connecting with others? Describe that person. How does he or she make you feel? How much of that person's charm is from natural talent and how much is learned? What can you do to be more like that person? I remember sitting on a personal video call with Robert Hollis one day. Whatever he said, I left that call feeling like I was a mile high, like I was the most important person that could do anything that I set my mind on. He left me with a feeling of belief in myself that was unstoppable, and it was quite a blissful feeling. My mother, too, used to tell me, Bess, you can do anything you set your mind to. You know, that's a good feeling, belief in that person. Number 3 discussion question. How good at you are remembering people's names? Where does that skill fit on your priority list? What tricks, if any, have you used to help you? I shared one. Love if you guys have a tip to share. And let's keep the discussion going here. And number 4 discussion question. Have you ever done homework to find out more about someone's interests so that you could better connect with that person? I'll say all the time. Did a coaching call yesterday, and beforehand I went and looked, read about that person's about section on their Facebook timeline to learn about them. And I saw what kind of posts they posted. You know, I wanted to learn more about them, speak their language, so I do that all the time. And when I have coached clients, business clients, in all sorts of businesses, like for example, one lady wanted to land a job. One lady wanted to land a client. So in every case, I encourage them to go to the company, their company, and read their mission statement, read their website, speak in words to them that's important to them, speak in their own words of what matters to them. When you research other people, do you find that pleasurable or a chore? Personally, I like it. How did it ultimately affect the relationship? How can you quickly find out another person's interests on the fly when it's impossible or inappropriate to do research? Well, first I'll answer the other question. How did it affect the relationship? I found that Facebook can be a place, my go-to place to learn about people. 2/3 of the people that I know are on Facebook, and so it can be quickly it's their diary, and also where, what's happening daily and how to stay in touch with them, but it's also where people express themselves. So I find that automatically, and even interviewers, when they have people coming in for job interviews, most of them now, they check, if not all, check their Facebook page and say, do we like what that person posts? Is it positive or negative? Is it ethical? Does it slam people? Is it positive or negative? Does it support people? Does it slam people? Because they might be on there being slammed, right? If they hire that person, that's a negative person. So not only be aware of what we put out on Facebook, but you can also use it as a quick lookup, quick reference to look up and learn more about somebody. I find it very handy to do that. But when you can't, let's say they're not on Facebook, or you don't have time to, or whatever, you're just face to face with them. What's the quickest way to get to know them? We teach in the school, the MLM Millionaire Academy, School for Network Marketers. We teach the process, FORM, F-O-R-M. And that's where you can ask a person about their family or their occupation or their recreation or what matters to them. I use the M for matter. What matters to them? Their dreams, their goals. So you can pick any one of those. It doesn't have to be all of them. And don't need to interrogate, but just be curious about that person. Ask, well, I have 3 kids. Do you have a family? And so that you're not appearing to be pry. You could share about yourself, or what do you do for work? Or what would you like to do? What do you like to do for fun? Those are all things you can ask more about them. Number 5 discussion question, the final one from John before we close. What can happen when one uses insincere flattery with another person to make him feel important? It's kind of manipulative, isn't it? He said, do you find it's difficult to make people feel important when you don't especially admire them? And how can you find genuine ways to express appreciation in such cases? How can you work to change your attitude toward people you don't like? I've had this happen where I felt like, oh, I'm going to back off from this person, right? Or I couldn't really embrace them or hug them or anything. But what I could do is find one thing that I did appreciate about him, because everybody is a mixture of things that I like or don't like about them. I'll say positive or negative things, but every negative person has something positive about them. And if I really don't like a person, I could focus on that, or I could focus on the parts that I do like, and they are there. If I search and if I look, the parts are there. So let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. If there's one negative thing that a person said that bugs you, you just can't abide by, don't throw that person out entirely. You could see if there's something that that you could appreciate and support and admire or acknowledge about that person. Because I hope people tolerate me. I'm not all positive, and I hope that they can accept this mixed bag of the good and the bad in me, and that I can do that in others. So that's our tips for today, from John Maxwell's Winning with People. Did you get something from this? Do you have tips or comments to offer? In return, I'd love to hear them. And tomorrow, Jeff and Brandy will be back with the chapter, Believing the Best in People Usually Brings Out the Best in People. So come on back for that. You can find the show, by the way, at the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show Facebook group. So we post it there every weekday, Monday through Friday, at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So you can watch the show on that group. If you'd like a text reminder for this show, just private message me, and I'll put you on the many people who ask me to give them a reminder daily of this show. It's a simple text. And if you would like to check out our school, the MLM Millionaire Academy, I'll post a link. But real quick, it is mlmmillionaireclub.com/basics, because that's our basic class that we teach. The name has changed to Academy, but you can still find it at the link, mlmmillionaireclub.com/basics, and I'll post a link for that in case you would like to try us out. It's very inexpensive, very affordable. We made it that way for all network marketers, mostly as a gift to this profession, to teach the best ways to succeed, easiest, simplest, duplicatable. Very proud to be able to bring this, the best that I've ever seen in network marketing, to you, to whoever would like it. And thank you for being here. Jump on the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show Facebook group daily. Have lunch with us. Get your personal growth work in. Thank you much. Take care. Love you guys. Bye.